This is years ago now. He had official referrals made to him. He said, I just couldn't find any evidence of the fraud. Getting paid by the fraudsters. And here you are, 24 years old, got a camera, got the public records, ask a few questions, and it's everywhere to be seen. I mean, this kind of corruption, and it's what, sadly, the Democrat Party wants to bring to this country all across America.
Stood right there, looked us in the eye under oath, and swore that this $250 million fraud was completely invisible. They told us that absolutely nobody could have found it. But I didn't buy it. I'm 24 years old. I don't have a badge, a government task force, or a massive budget. I just had a camera, a list of public spending records, and a willingness to ask a simple question. I walked right up to these heavily funded learning centers and daycares, and asked if I could enroll a child. The truth? No kids. No learning centers. Just empty rooms and wide-open corruption. If a kid with a camera can expose this in a single afternoon, why couldn't the state's top officials find it? Simple, because they were getting paid by the very people committing the fraud. Here is exactly how we caught them, and how we are finally forcing this system into the light.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to the witnesses for being here. Mr. Shirley, I just want to start with you. I, for my part, want to say thank you for the terrific work you've done on exposing fraud all across the country, nowhere more so than in the state of Minnesota. You know, it's a funny thing. Not long ago, the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota was sitting right where you're sitting, Keith Ellison. And I had a question or two for him about the fraud in that state. And he said to me that, I mean, nobody could have found it. I mean, he didn't know anything about it. You know, he was completely in the dark until it was all blown open, and there's just nothing that would have tipped him off. I find that interesting because, near as I can tell, I mean, you were a 24-year-old independent journalist. You had a camera and a list of public spending records, right?
Correct.
So if this fraud was so hard to find, how did you manage to find it when none of the public officials in Minnesota could find it?
I simply went to the locations of the learning centers and the daycares and asked to enroll a child, and there was no way to enroll a child into any of these daycares. In fact, there were no children to be seen anywhere.
So in other words, you asked a few questions and you looked. You actually looked to see if there was fraud.
Yes.
And you found it wide open everywhere, rampant.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
And a lot of the Medicaid programs inside of Minnesota, from the non-emergency vehicles, the transportation companies.
You know, I find it so interesting because Keith Ellison, when he was Attorney General way back in 2018, 2019, I think we've got a poster to this effect, was actually told and had multiple referrals made to his office about fraud in some of the very programs that you looked at. I mean, this is years ago now. He had official referrals made to him. He said, I just couldn't find any evidence of the fraud. Do you think maybe there's a little bit of corruption at the governmental level in the state of Minnesota? I mean, is that just maybe a possibility? Maybe some of these guys are maybe on the take, you think? I mean, possible?
Yeah, it's not even maybe or possibly, it's a certainty.
Yeah, I would say so too, and I can prove it to you. Keith Ellison, that guy, after overlooking $250 million in fraud, he took $10,000 in campaign contributions from the very people who were committing the fraud, who came to see him in his office, asked him to please get state investigators off of their backs, which he did, asked him to shut down the investigations, which he helped with, offered to give him money, which he accepted. I mean, I think that's the answer as to why can't any of these people find the fraud? Because they're getting paid by the fraudsters. And here you are, 24 years old, got a camera, got the public records, ask a few questions, and it's everywhere to be seen. I mean, this kind of corruption, and it's what, sadly, the Democrat Party wants to bring to this country all across America. I don't know why guys like Ellison are not being prosecuted, I have to tell you. And he sat there and lied under oath right where you're sitting now. I asked him why he took this money. He said, I didn't take a dime. He took $10,000. It's on the record. I just want to commend you for what you've done. Mr. O'Keefe, I want to thank you for being here as well. And I want to thank you particularly for your investigations, so many of them, but particularly those into anti-Christian bias. I want to ask you just about Trevor Williams of the Washington Nationals. You found that Trevor Williams was shut down, he was muffled, he was gagged by his own team because he had the audacity to say that he didn't think that this poster, I think we got a picture of this, that this outrageous desecration of the Last Supper by this group that calls itself the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, which is an anti-Christian group that actively mocks Catholics and other Christians. He said he didn't like this, and for that reason, if I remember correctly, the Washington Nationals tried to shut him down. Tell us just about what your investigation found.
This is involving the Washington Nationals baseball team and civil rights violations and anti-Christian bias. And the Washington Nationals has fired this vice president for his bias against Christians. And it's part of our expose exposing officials in corporations and in the administrative state, the deep state, breaking the law, pushing back. We have another one coming out inside the Pentagon in the next few days with similar themes.
Well, I look forward to that. Let me just say this. Were you surprised at all, given your investigation of the Trevor Williams incident, were you surprised at all when the commissioner of baseball just a few weeks ago threatened to penalize and fine players, 2 players on the Giants who put Bible verses onto one on their cap, I think one on their jersey? The commissioner of baseball came out and said, oh, that's against our rules, we're going to fine you. It was absolutely outrageous. Did that surprise you, given the sort of systemic bias, if I could use that phrase that you
Nothing
found?
surprises me. There's a lot of irony and absurdity in reality, but it does not shock me, and I think sunlight, to quote Brandeis, is the best disinfectant. So they might do some things in open, but I think it's possible to shame the devil by capturing these candid remarks behind closed doors where they really talk about their intent and their motivation. And that video caused a firestorm. And to quote Nick Shirley, the video does not film itself. The citizen journalists get to show up and do the thing. And I think it's more difficult for bureaucrats to do that. So citizen journalists are going to do it.
That's great. Well, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, and I think partly because of what you exposed, the kind of bias you exposed in the Trevor Williams case, the commissioner of Major League Baseball had to back down.
Yes.
When we confronted him on this issue and admit, actually, the rules permit the players to write these things on their jerseys if they so choose. They permit the players to forego wearing politically themed jerseys at all, and he committed to me in writing that none of these players will ever be fined or disciplined for expressing their faith. But you and I both know he wouldn't have done that had he not been embarrassed by the facts that you and others brought forward. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
I brought the camera, and I exposed the empty daycares. But it was Senator Josh Hawley who stepped into that hearing room and dropped the hammer. He looked Keith Ellison dead in the eye and refused to let him escape. Ellison sat there and tried to play the victim. He tried to claim he was completely in the dark. But Senator Hawley didn't just ask questions, he brought the receipts. He revealed that back on December 11, 2021, the very fraudsters behind this $250 million scam walked right into the Attorney General's office. They sat there for an hour, begging Ellison to get state investigators off their backs. And we know he agreed to do it. Why? Because it was all caught on tape. 9 days after that meeting, Ellison took a fat $10,000 campaign contribution from them. He didn't just look the way, he took their cash and protected them. When Hawley confronted him with the truth, Ellison squirmed. He lied. He said, "I didn't help them." But Hawley wasn't having it. He didn't back down for a single second. He looked at Ellison and said what every single American taxpayer has been thinking. You helped fraudsters defraud your state and this government. You took $10,000 and helped them do it. Sir, you ought to be indicted. You should resign. Think about what that money was used for. Hundreds of millions of dollars meant to feed hungry children in Minnesota, funneled instead to transnational criminal organizations, drug trafficking, and international bad actors. While local families were left with nothing, corrupt politicians were getting their campaigns funded. If it weren't for leaders like Josh Hawley standing up in that committee room, this massive cover-up would still be running in the dark. This is the reality of the administrative deep state. They think they can steal our money, lie to our faces under oath, and buy off the people meant to prosecute them. But when we stand together, when citizen journalists bring the cameras and bold leaders like Josh Hawley bring the law, the system crumbles. If you are sick and tired of corrupt politicians selling out American taxpayers and getting away with it, we need to make sure this video reaches every single corner of the country. Hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications, share this video, and drop a comment below letting me know if you think Keith Ellison should face indictment. The establishment wants you silent. Don't let them win. Subscribe now, and let's keep shining the light on the truth.